Hello students, welcome to this short presentation. I hope you're all keeping well and keeping safe and keeping calm in this very stressful time. I put this presentation together to give you some advice and information about our final assessment, Artifact 4. As you've probably heard from all of your module coordinators, we are having to revisit and look at assessments to make sure they are fair, given that we've had to change the way we are delivering our teaching and learning and due to the fact that students are now learning online. So the following presentation will give you information and advice about how we've changed our final assessment, Artifact 4. So the reason we've had to make changes is that we've had advice from the government about social distancing, so we are encouraging our students not to use public spaces, to avoid proximity and person-to-person contact in order to stay well. We are also aware that many students are choosing to go home while they can until in case travel restrictions are placed. So students are flying home to their respective countries to be with their families in case flights are suspended and they can't be with them later on. So we're aware that students are now in different locations around the world or different locations around the UK, so we're trying to make the assessment as simple as possible and as accessible as possible so students can get on with evidencing their learning. Now, one thing I do want to point out at this point, yes, we have major disruption to the way teaching and learning is delivered and changes in the assessment, but if you want to finish your first year, you must attempt your assessments. If you can't attempt your assessments because you are unwell or a family member is unwell, you must complete an ECF, and that will give you more time. There is no reason why we would allow you to pass the first year, or we can allow you to pass the first year if you haven't completed your coursework. So you must get that done. You must pass sufficient modules, and to pass modules you must complete sufficient coursework. So don't think because of the crisis that you just don't have to complete any coursework and you can progress to level 5. Please, please, please be aware you must complete your coursework in order to finish your first year and move on. Our job is to make your assessment as simple and accessible as possible, so it's frictionless given the new situations. So how does this affect our assessment? So the final assessment, Artifact 4 for digital content creation, was to create either a video promoting the University of Portsmouth or a podcast promoting the University of Portsmouth. With either artifact, it was expected that you would hire equipment from CCI, so you would get familiar with using some of the industry standard technology for recording to a high quality. Now, due to the advice around not using public spaces, we do not expect you to hire equipment from CCI, and also there's a chance that we may need to close down our facilities as well in terms of having our staff present on site. Also, previously with the assessment, it was expected that you would be using our university computers in the computer rooms. Of course, we cannot expect you to do that now. Some good news, despite all of the challenges with access to materials. Adobe Creative Cloud have agreed to offer very kindly, for the duration of the COVID-19 crisis, free access to all of their apps. So you can go to Adobe Creative Cloud now and download for free any of the apps. So if you haven't taken out already your own private subscription, for the duration, I think until about June, you can access the Adobe Creative Cloud apps, so you can download Premiere Pro to your own computer. So you will be able to continue with the assessment, so you don't need to be on campus and use our computers to do that. So the aim of adapting the assessment is not to cause more chaos or more worry or strife, it is to make things simple. So we want to keep you safe and to reduce any need for person-to-person contact. We want to reduce stress and barriers and make sure that everyone can get on with the assessment wherever they are. We want to also give you the opportunity to show us how much you've learned, so we can actually give you some feedback on your progress via your grade and your feedback, and you can complete your first year. So it's all about maintaining fairness, maintaining accessibility and simplicity. So let's have a look at what's changed for digital content creation, Artifact 4. So the biggest change is that Artifact 4 is now individual. So previously you were going to do Artifact 4 as a group. Now, one of the reasons was because CCI will only hire equipment to groups, and that's because the equipment is heavy and expensive and it takes a group to look after it and to sort of unpack it, put it away, etc. So that was one of the reasons we made this a group presentation, and because it's a lot of work to do. Creating a digital content piece, recording and setting up camera angles, it can require more than one person, like a team. So the assessment is no longer group because you're not expected to hire any equipment. So it is now an individual assessment. So each student must submit an artifact and each student will receive an individual mark. So no working together on one piece or anything like that. So we figured this would also be simple. As students are going back to their respective countries and homes, it will be more difficult to collaborate. So we thought by going back to an individual assessment, it will make things much more simple and more stress-free for you. So what else has changed? Now, you did have a choice of doing a video or a podcast. We've had to narrow that choice down, or remove the choice. So now the artifact is podcast only. So my apologies to those students who had planned to do a video and were excited about doing a video, but of course now we cannot support you by providing the recording equipment that you needed to do the video. So the decision has been made by the sort of management team and myself and Ollie that the best option would be to get all students to do a podcast. This is because podcasts can actually be done from home in your bedroom. You don't need to be running around campus recording footage. You don't need to be sort of coming into contact with members of the public to record them. And of course right now the campus looks like a ghost town, so it's not the best time to be recording footage of the University of Portsmouth campus to promote it to students. So we have decided to go to podcast only. So hopefully this will make it simple and give all students the opportunity to evidence their learning in planning, production and post-production of a digital content artifact. Previously, I'd ask students to do a promotional podcast or a promotional video. So I wanted you to promote the University of Portsmouth to potential students. Now, you're not going to be on campus and you're not necessarily going to have access to other students or to gain footage. So I have decided to open up and give you the choice of topic. So you could stick with promoting the University of Portsmouth to potential students, especially if you've already started working on this and you've got some good ideas and you've started some planning, please do. However, if you haven't started already and you have a passion or an interest or something you would love to create a podcast around, please do that. It could be anything from fashion to gaming to healthy eating to how to survive social isolation during COVID-19. I really don't mind, as long as it's something that you can use as a focal point to learn about the process of creating a podcast, from planning to production to post-production. So hopefully this will open up who you can interview as well. So you could do a variety of different formats for your podcast. You might decide to have a monologue and just be the host and talk about a topic. You could previously ask people questions and then spend the podcast answering those questions. Or you could interview somebody. You might have a member of the family or a close friend who you could interview via Zoom or Google Hangout, so an online chat facility. And you can actually interview them around perhaps they are an advocate or an activist, or perhaps they have an interesting profession, or they're very good at gaming or something else. So there are lots of different options, but I thought, given the situation that students are no longer on campus, it would be really nice for you to be able to choose the topic of your podcast. Now, as you're doing this on your own, as this is now an individual attempt, it was decided that creating 8 to 10 minutes might be more challenging. So to simplify things, we've decided to drop the minimum time of the podcast, the minimum duration length of the podcast, down to 5 minutes. So it gives you not as much content to produce on your own. So you can still do 8 minutes. You can still go up to the 10 minutes maximum. Please don't go over, as we have lots of marking to do. And again, it's about sort of planning and being concise, but you can do a podcast as short as 5 minutes, 8 minutes ideally, and up to 10 minutes maximum. So you're no longer working as a group, so we're trying to lighten the load so you don't have to do as much work. What else has changed? Now, previously, as part of the assessment, whether for video or for podcast, you were required to produce your pre-production documents. So these were documents for hiring equipment, health and safety documents, location documents, all of the documents, room hire that you might need in order to use the equipment and space around the University of Portsmouth. Now, obviously that's not happening now, so there's a lot less pre-production documents required. So this part of the assessment has actually been removed. It's gone. There is no longer a distinct section where you will receive 20% for pre-production documents. It's gone. Now, previously, working as a group, creating your podcast or your video, you were asked to record a presentation of the project. So talking about your planning, the production, the editing, the mastering of your final product. So you're not working as a group anymore, and video can be a little bit fiddly. So we've decided to simplify this section as well and just make it a written report. So you're still going to do your podcast, and then you're going to write a little written report, just 1,500 words, that gives you a chance to discuss your creative process, the decisions that you've made. So again, written reports are much easier to create and upload than a video, so we don't have to worry about editing. So we're trying to simplify the assessment, but still give you a chance to show us what you've learned. So what will go in the report? So we'd like you to talk about the planning process. So you could even include some images, some diagrams if you're doing a flow chart or a mind map to kind of look at some of the topics that you could cover and subtopics. We want you to talk about the actual production, also known as tracking. So you could talk about the technology, the software, the intro, the main part of your podcast, the outro. So all of this will be delivered to you via online resources on Moodle or through LinkedIn Learning, and obviously through Ollie's workshops as well. So there's lots and lots of things that you can talk about: editing, mixing, mastering. So all of the things that you're learning. So it's why did you do it? What effect did it have on the production quality? What were the limitations or challenges that you had to overcome or would do differently next time? So it's a kind of a reflective writing piece, but it's more kind of a writing about your project. So I will be providing a nice template document that you can fill in. It gives you some examples of what you can put in each section. So you're not having to create something for the first time and not really knowing what should be in there. So I hope you'll find that relieves some stress, having a nice template and having a written report rather than a group recorded presentation to do. So in summary, Artifact 4, which is 40% of the digital content creation module's weighting, is now an individual assessment. You are being asked to create a podcast episode, which will be 70% of the artifact, and you're also being asked to write a written report on producing your podcast episode, which will be 1,500 words and 30% of the artifact. So hopefully this sums up nicely how the assessment now looks. It's a podcast, it's individual with a written report. All of the resources will be on Moodle. I'll be available to answer questions about the assessment, and Ollie's going to be available both by producing pre-recorded sessions and actually having online sessions where you can share your screen with him if you have any issues with your using the software or your planning processes, and he can be available to help guide you and help you learn new tools and skills. So hopefully this has been informative. As mentioned, do drop me an email. My email is on the Moodle site in the module handbook. It's also at the beginning of most slides, including this particular deck of slides, which will also be put on Moodle. So thank you very much for your understanding and flexibility, and good luck with your assessment.